The conference hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, built by the Valorians who believed that transparent structures promoted honest dialogue. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human podium, her hands gripping the sides as she looked out at the assembled representatives of 4,000 alien civilizations. The Galactic Council had been meeting for 300 years before humanity even discovered faster-than-light travel. And now, 47 years after Earth's admission, the humans were still treated like children at the adult table. The Kthra border incursions are increasing, Sarah said. Her voice translated into thousands of languages by the neural implants every council member wore. In the past 6 months, they have violated our territorial space 19 times. They are testing us, and I urge this council to take action before the situation escalates. A ripple of movement passed through the chamber. The Kthra delegation, their reptilian scales gleaming under the hall's artificial suns, remained motionless. Their lead diplomat, War Commander Kthra, rose from his seat. He was nearly 3 meters tall. His species evolved from apex predators on a world where violence was rare but decisive. The humans exaggerate, Kthra said, his translated voice carrying amusement. These were navigation errors, nothing more. Perhaps if humanity's technology was more advanced, such confusion would not occur. Laughter echoed from several delegations. The Zephyrini, beings of crystallized energy, chimed with sounds like breaking glass. The Malothians, who resembled mobile fungal colonies, released spores that translated to mockery in the chamber's atmosphere processors. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years, and in that time she had learned that most of the galaxy viewed humanity as barely civilized. They had examined Earth's history, seen the wars, the genocides, the nuclear weapons that nearly ended the species in the 21st century. They had decided humans were primitive, violent, and in need of guidance. Commander Kthra, Sarah continued, maintaining her diplomatic tone, Earth has complied with every council regulation since our admission. We reduced our military to the permitted levels. We dismantled our weapon systems. We accepted junior status and have never challenged the council's authority. But I must remind this assembly that our compliance is a choice, not a necessity. The Valorian Council President, a being named Crystalline Thought Ascending, shimmered with colors that indicated confusion. Ambassador Chen, are you threatening this council?
No, Sarah replied firmly.
I am warning you. Humanity has a long history of warfare. We have fought wars that consumed continents. We have created weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We chose peace because we understood the alternative. We chose to follow your rules because we believed in a better way. But if you force us to defend ourselves without restriction, do not assume you understand what we are capable of. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in what the translation systems rendered as dismissive noise. The council members had heard this before. Every few years the humans would issue these dramatic warnings and nothing ever came of it. Earth was small with only 37 colony worlds compared to the thousands held by older civilizations. Their technology was adequate but unremarkable. Their military, now reduced to council-mandated levels, could barely defend their own territory. Your warning is noted, Crystalline Thought Ascending said, the colors of its body indicating the matter was closed. The Kthra have assured us that no hostile intent exists. We recommend both parties engage in cultural exchange programs to build mutual understanding. Sarah wanted to scream. Instead, she bowed slightly and returned to her seat. Beside her, Admiral James Okoye, Earth's military representative to the council, leaned close. They don't believe us, he whispered. They never do, Sarah replied. Back on Earth, in a facility buried beneath the Australian outback, Dr. Marcus Webb reviewed the latest reports from the reconnaissance drones monitoring Kthra military movements. The drones were strictly illegal under council law, of course, but Earth had learned early that following every rule would get them killed. Their fleet is massing near the Proxima Junction, Marcus said to the holographic image of General Patricia Zhao, commander of Earth's United Defense Force. That's 3 jumps from New Harmony. New Harmony was humanity's most successful colony, home to 8 million people, and Earth's primary agricultural research facilities. It was also poorly defended, with only a single orbital station and a small defensive fleet. Do we have authorization to reinforce? General Zhao asked. Negative. The Council would notice the fleet movements and demand an explanation. "We're already under observation for our last unauthorized military exercise." General Zhao's expression hardened. She was 72 years old and had served in the military since before first contact with alien life. She remembered when humanity's weapons were unrestricted, when Earth maintained dozens of dreadnoughts capable of cracking moons and orbital weapons that could sterilize continents. She had watched those weapons dismantled, cut apart, scattered across the solar system as scrap metal to satisfy Council regulations. "Have we heard from Site 17? She asked. Marcus smiled slightly. "Construction is on schedule. The first batch will be ready for deployment in 6 months." Site 17 did not officially exist. Neither did Sites 3, 8, 12, or the 43 other hidden facilities scattered across human space. The Council believed humanity had destroyed their advanced weapons. They were wrong. Every schematic, every research file, every tactical doctrine had been preserved, studied, and improved upon. Humanity had spent 47 years pretending to be harmless while preparing for the day when the illusion would shatter. That day came on a cold morning in March, by Earth's calendar. The Kthra fleet, numbering over 400 vessels, emerged from faster-than-light travel in orbit around New Harmony. They did not issue warnings or demands. They simply began firing on the colony's cities. The orbital defense station lasted 6 minutes before a Kthra plasma lance cut it in half. The human defensive fleet, 12 ships following Council-approved designs, engaged immediately. They were outnumbered 30-1 and destroyed within an hour. On the planet below, the bombardment continued for 8 hours before the Kthra ceased fire. 340,000 people died. Most of them were civilians, many of them children. The Kthra troops landed afterward, expecting to accept the colony's surrender and incorporate the survivors into their empire as slave labor, as was their custom with conquered worlds. Instead, they found a population that refused to submit. The colonists had retreated into the underground shelters that every human colony maintained, and they were armed. Not with Council-approved weapons, but with equipment that had been hidden away for exactly this scenario. The Kthra ground forces expected frightened farmers. They encountered guerrilla fighters who had been training for decades. Earth received the news 14 hours after the attack began. Ambassador Chen watched the footage from New Harmony, her hands shaking as she saw the burned cities and the piles of bodies the Kthra had left in the streets as warnings. "Call an emergency council session," she said quietly. "Sarah," Admiral Okoye said, "you know they will demand we negotiate." "I know," she replied, "and I'm going to tell them exactly what happens next." The emergency session convened within 3 hours. The chamber was less full than usual, with many delegates attending via hologram rather than in person. Ambassador Chen walked to the human podium, and this time, her hands did not shake. "The Kthra Empire has committed an act of genocide against a human colony world," she began. 340,000 of our people are dead. The Council's rules of engagement, which we have followed faithfully for 47 years, require that we now enter mediation and accept a negotiated settlement." She paused, looking directly at Thexkal, who sat in his delegation seats with an expression that might have been satisfaction. "We decline," Sarah continued. "Humanity invokes Article 73 of the Council Charter, which permits unlimited self-defense in response to genocidal attacks. We warned this Council repeatedly that pushing humanity to war was a mistake. You ignored those warnings. You mistook our compliance for weakness and our restraint for inability." Ambassador Chen, crystalline thought ascending, interrupted, its colors flashing alarm. "You cannot be suggesting—" "Earth is going to war," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Not the limited, regulated conflict you understand. Real war as humanity has practiced it for 10,000 years. We gave you peace because we chose peace. You chose to give us war instead. May whatever gods you worship have mercy on you because we will not." The Kthra expected retaliation. What they received was something entirely different. War Commander Thexkal reviewed the intelligence reports from his command ship, the Endless Hunger, with growing confusion. The human defensive fleet had been destroyed at New Harmony as expected. The Council had issued formal protests but taken no action, as expected. By all military doctrine, the humans should now be scrambling to defend their remaining colonies while negotiating surrender terms. Instead, human ships had simply vanished. Where is their fleet? Thexcal demanded of his intelligence officer, a younger Kthra named Sephron. Unknown, Commander. Our scouts report that human vessels have withdrawn from their normal patrol routes. They are not defending their colonies or their homeworld approach vectors. They are cowards, then, Thexcal concluded. Prepare the fleet for the assault on their mining operations in the Arcturus sector. Once we control their resource worlds, Earth will have no choice but to submit. The Kthra fleet, still numbering over 300 vessels after the New Harmony engagement, entered faster than light travel toward their next target. They emerged in the Arcturus sector expecting to find lightly defended mining stations and perhaps a token defensive force. What they found was nothing. The mining stations had been abandoned, their equipment stripped away and the orbital platforms completely empty. For a moment, Thexcal wondered if the humans had simply fled. Then his sensors detected movement. Hundreds of small objects, each no larger than a personnel shuttle, suddenly appeared on the tactical display. They were accelerating at speeds that would kill any organic crew, and moving in patterns that violated every principle of civilized warfare. No formation, no coordination, no clear command structure. What are those? Sephron asked. Unknown contacts, possibly missiles or drones, the sensor officer replied. But they are not using any council-approved propulsion or weapon systems. The objects swarmed toward the Kthra fleet like angry insects. The fleet's defensive batteries opened fire, destroying dozens of them, but there were too many. When the first one reached a Kthra destroyer, it did not explode as expected. Instead, it attached itself to the hull and began cutting through the armor with some kind of molecular dissolver. Within seconds, more of the objects had attached themselves to ships across the fleet. They cut through hulls, vented atmosphere, and disrupted power systems. The Kthra crews tried to respond, but they were trained for conventional fleet battles, not this kind of asymmetric attack. All ships, emergency faster-than-light jump, Thexcal ordered. The fleet scattered, jumping to random coordinates to escape the swarm. When they regrouped 3 hours later, they had lost 47 vessels. Not destroyed exactly, but damaged beyond repair and unable to maintain life support. The crews had been evacuated, but the ships themselves were now floating wrecks. What weapons were those? Thexcal demanded. Nobody had an answer. The Kthra had been fighting wars for 6,000 years, and they had never encountered anything like this. The Galactic Council had regulations about artificial intelligence in weapon systems, about autonomous attack drones, about warfare conducted without organic oversight. Humanity appeared to be violating every single one of those regulations. On Earth, General Zhao watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The AI-controlled hunter-killer drones had performed even better than expected. They had been designed 40 years ago, before the Council banned such weapons, and humanity had quietly improved the technology ever since. The Kthra are filing formal complaints with the Council, Admiral Okoye reported. They are claiming we are using illegal weapons. Good, General Zhao replied. Let them complain. We warned them this would not be the kind of war they understand. The second engagement came 4 days later. The Kthra, now reinforced by allied vessels from the Malothian Collective, attempted to blockade Earth's largest trade route through the Sirius Junction. They positioned their fleet in a defensive formation, ready for another swarm of drones. This time, the human attack came from a completely different direction. A single human ship, a modified cargo hauler named Hope's Defiance, emerged from faster-than-light travel at maximum velocity. It was not attempting to fight. It was attempting to ram. The Kthra opened fire immediately, their weapons tearing through the Hope's Defiance hull. But the ship did not slow down. It continued its trajectory, absorbing damage, and then it collided with the Kthra command carrier at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion consumed both vessels and damaged 18 other ships nearby. The Kthra fleet broke formation in panic, and that was when the real attack began. Human warships, utilizing stealth technology that the Council had never seen before, decloaked throughout the battlefield and opened fire at point-blank range. The engagement lasted 37 minutes. When it was over, the Kthra had lost their command carrier, 3 heavy cruisers, and 22 support vessels. The humans had lost 4 ships, including the Hope's Defiance, but the humans had also broadcast the entire battle on open channels, ensuring that every species in the galaxy could watch. They are using suicide tactics, the Valorian Council president said during the emergency session that followed. This is barbaric. This is war, Ambassador Chen replied coldly. The Kthra wanted to test humanity's resolve. Now they know. We will use any tactic, any weapon, any strategy necessary to defend our people. The Council regulations on warfare were designed for your civilized conflicts over resources and territory. Humanity has fought wars of extinction. We know what total war means, Kanos. You must stop, Crystalline Thought Ascending insisted. There are rules, protocols. You cannot simply, we can and we will, Sarah interrupted. We spent 47 years following your rules. We tried to be the civilized species you wanted us to be. The Kthra chose to interpret that as weakness. They murdered hundreds of thousands of our people. Did the Council sanction them? Did you send peacekeepers? Did you do anything except issue statements of concern? The chamber fell silent. That is what I thought, Sarah continued. Humanity is standing alone as we always have. The difference now is that we are not pretending anymore. The Kthra War Council met aboard their fortress world of Kthra Prime, deep within their imperial territory. They had never lost so many ships so quickly, and they had never faced an enemy who fought with such disregard for their own casualties. We need reinforcements, Thexcal said. Contact the Zephrani and the Antillean Combine. Offer them territorial concessions in exchange for military support. Is that wise? Sephiron asked. The humans have shown capabilities we did not anticipate. Perhaps we should negotiate. We do not negotiate with prey, Thexcal snarled. The humans are using tricks and desperate tactics because they know they cannot win a conventional war. Once we have sufficient numbers, we will crush them. 3 species answered the Kthra call for support. The Zephrani, beings of crystallized energy who controlled vast territories through economic influence. The Antillean Combine, a hive mind species with excellent manufacturing capabilities. And the Drek Sovereignty, warriors who believed in honor and personal combat. Together with the Kthra, they assembled a fleet of over 1,000 vessels, the largest military force assembled in the galaxy for 300 years. Let the humans try their tricks now, Thexcal said. On Earth, General Zhao received the intelligence about the combined fleet without surprise. She had expected this. Every war humanity had ever fought had taught the same lesson. Enemies always underestimated human determination, and they always believed that overwhelming force would break human resistance. Release the Ghost Fleet, she ordered. In hidden facilities across human space, automated factories that had been operating in secret for decades activated their final production protocols. Ships began launching from asteroid bases, from hollowed-out moons, from concealed construction yards in the deep dark between stars. They were not crewed by humans. They were controlled by artificial intelligences that had been trained on every battle humanity had ever fought, every tactical doctrine ever developed, every ruthless strategy ever conceived. The Ghost Fleet numbered 5,000 vessels. Each one was optimized for a specific purpose: fast attack, long-range bombardment, electronic warfare, or simple destruction. They did not need life support, did not fear death, and did not hesitate. They were everything the Galactic Council had feared when they banned AI warfare, and they were about to teach the galaxy why those fears were justified. The combined Kthra fleet received their first indication that something was wrong when their faster-than-light communication networks suddenly went offline. Human cyber warfare platforms, themselves AI-controlled, had infiltrated the Kthra military networks and begun systematically destroying their ability to coordinate. Then the Ghost Fleet arrived, and the real nightmare began. The battle took place across 14 solar systems simultaneously. The Ghost Fleet did not fight fair. They used relativistic weapons that could destroy planets, biological agents designed specifically for each enemy species, nano-weapon swarms that could disassemble a ship molecule by molecule, and psychological warfare tactics that broadcast horrifying imagery directly into enemy communication channels. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 4,000 civilizations shouted, chimed, released chemical signals, and broadcast electromagnetic pulses in every language and communication method the translation systems could handle. At the center of the storm stood Ambassador Sarah Chen, her face calm despite the accusations being hurled at her from every direction. The humans must be stopped. A Zephrani delegate shrieked, its crystalline form flickering with colors that indicated pure terror. They have destroyed our entire defense fleet. They are using weapons banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. We are using the weapons we told you we possessed, Sarah replied. For 47 years, you believed we had destroyed our military technology. We did not. We simply hid it and made it better. You chose not to believe our warnings. The Malothian representative, a mobile fungal colony named Growth Through Seasons, released spores that the translation system rendered as outrage. You deceived the Council. You violated trust. You maintained illegal weapon systems. We maintained our survival, Sarah shot back. The Kthra slaughtered 340,000 of our people. Where was the Council? Where were the peacekeepers? Where was the justice you promised us when we joined your alliance? Crystalline thought ascending shimmered with colors that Sarah had learned to interpret as desperation. Ambassador Chen, please. You must call off your fleet. The Kthra are willing to negotiate. Their allies have withdrawn from the conflict. Surely this has gone far enough. Far enough. Sarah's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. The Kthra Empire still exists. Their homeworld still stands. Their military infrastructure is damaged but not destroyed. We have not gone far enough. We will go exactly as far as necessary to ensure this never happens to humanity again. You are speaking of conquering their homeworld, a Drex representative said, its translated voice carrying both horror and respect. That is a line that has not been crossed in the Council's history for over a century. Then perhaps it is time for a new precedent, Sarah replied. The debate raged for 6 more hours before the Council took a vote on whether to intervene militarily against humanity. The result was telling. 3,000 civilizations abstained, 800 voted against intervention, and only 200 voted in favor. The galaxy had seen what happened to species who fought humanity, and most of them wanted no part of it. On the Kthra homeworld of Kthra Prime, panic spread through the population. The planet had not faced invasion for 4,000 years. Their orbital defenses were considered the finest in the galaxy, with weapons platforms capable of destroying entire fleets. They had fortress cities built into mountain ranges, underground bunkers that could sustain billions for years, and a military tradition that emphasized defense of the homeworld above all else. None of it mattered. The human fleet arrived in orbit 72 hours after the Council debate. They did not announce themselves or issue demands. They simply began systematically destroying every orbital defense platform, every military satellite, every communication relay. The Kthra Defense Forces launched everything they had, over 2,000 fighters and bombers, backed by ground-based artillery that could reach orbit. The human fleet absorbed the attack with shields technology that the Kthra could not penetrate. Then they returned fire with precision that was almost artistic. Every Kthra military installation was targeted and destroyed. Every government building was hit. Every center of resistance was eliminated. But the residential areas remained untouched. Thexcal watched from his underground command bunker as his homeworld burned. He had ordered the evacuation of all military personnel and their families to the shelters, but millions of civilians remained on the surface. He expected the humans to kill them all. It was what the Kthra would have done. Instead, the bombardment stopped. A communication came through on all Kthra frequencies. It was Ambassador Chen, standing in what appeared to be the bridge of a human warship. People of Kthra Prime, she said in flawless Kthra language. Your government chose to make war on humanity. Your military chose to murder our civilians. We have now demonstrated that we can destroy your world completely if we choose. But we are not monsters. We are giving you one opportunity to surrender. Evacuate your cities. We are coming down. Thexcal stared at the message in disbelief. They are going to invade? Why not just destroy us from orbit? Because, Sephiron said quietly, they want us to know we lost. They want us to face them. The first human soldiers landed in drop pods that screamed through the atmosphere like meteors. The Kthra had expected troops in armor, carrying conventional weapons. What they got was something else entirely. Human soldiers wore powered exoskeletons that enhanced their already formidable physical capabilities. They moved faster than Kthra warriors, struck harder, and seemed to require no rest. They coordinated with a precision that suggested telepathy, though intelligence reports confirmed humans were not psychic. They used tactics that the Kthra military academies had never taught, because those tactics were considered too ruthless, too effective, too brutal. The first major engagement took place in the fortress city of Kthra, built into a mountain range and designed to be impregnable. The Kthra garrison numbered 50,000 warriors, equipped with the finest weapons their empire could provide. They had supplies for a 5-year siege and enough ammunition to fight for decades. The human assault force numbered 3,000 soldiers. They took the city in 18 hours. Captain Marcus Rivera led his squad through the rubble of what had been the fortress's eastern wall. His heads-up display marked enemy positions, structural weaknesses, and optimal firing lanes. Behind him, his squad moved with the practiced efficiency of veterans who had trained together for years. Contact. 200 meters elevated position, his AI assistant announced directly into his neural interface. Marcus did not need to give orders. His squad already knew what to do. 2 soldiers broke off to flank the position while the rest provided suppressing fire. The Kthra defenders returned fire with plasma weapons that could melt steel. But the human armor absorbed the hits and kept advancing. The Kthra warrior holding the elevated position was named Kreshnal. He had served in the military for 20 years and had never known fear. Now, watching the human soldiers advance despite his fire, he felt something he had no name for. They did not retreat when injured. They did not panic when outgunned. They just kept coming, relentless as a tide. One of the flanking soldiers emerged behind Kreshnal's position and fired a weapon that looked deceptively simple. The projectile hit Kreshnal in the chest and detonated, not with an explosion, but with a burst of electricity that overloaded his nervous system. He collapsed, paralyzed but alive. The human soldier stepped over him and continued advancing. Kreshnal realized that the humans were not trying to kill every Kthra they encountered. They were neutralizing threats and moving on. It was more efficient than slaughter, and somehow more terrifying. In the command bunker deep beneath Kthra, Thexikal received reports of the fortress city's fall with growing dread. His communication with the garrison had cut off hours ago, and now reconnaissance showed human forces consolidating their control of the entire city. 50,000 Kthra warriors defeated by 3,000 humans. How? He asked the empty air. They are better at war than we are, Sephiron said. We evolved on a world where predators were rare. Our species fought over territory and resources, but violence was uncommon. Earth, humans evolved alongside dozens of predator species. They competed with them, hunted them, domesticated them. Then they spent 10,000 years fighting each other. They have had more wars in their recorded history than our species has had in 10 times that span. But they seemed so peaceful, Thexikal protested. In the council, they were always advocating for negotiation, for cultural exchange, for understanding. They were, Sephiron agreed, because they know what war costs. They chose peace because they understood the alternative better than we did. We mistook their choice for weakness. A human communication broadcast interrupted their conversation. This time it was not Ambassador Chen, but a soldier. The camera showed a human woman in combat armor, her helmet removed to reveal a face covered in sweat and dust. I am Colonel Amanda Torres, commander of the human ground forces on Kthra Prime. To the Kthra military leadership, we have secured all major population centers on your homeworld. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. Your fleet is scattered. You have lost this war. I am authorized to accept your surrender on the following terms. The terms appeared on the display. They were harsh but not genocidal. The Kthra Empire would be dissolved. Their military would be reduced to a small defensive force. They would pay reparations for the attack on New Harmony. War criminals, including Thexikal himself, would be handed over for trial. But the Kthra people would be allowed to survive, to rebuild, to have a future. If you do not accept these terms within 12 hours, Colonel Torres continued, we will resume military operations. We have the capability to bombard your planet from orbit, to deploy biological weapons tailored to your species, to use nuclear devices that would render your world uninhabitable. The surrender of the Kthra homeworld sent shockwaves through the galaxy. 3 other species who had allied with the Kthra immediately contacted Earth to negotiate separate peace agreements. The Zephrani offered complete access to their economic networks. The Antillian Combine provided technological patents worth trillions. The Drex sovereignty, warriors who respected strength above all else, offered a formal alliance. Earth accepted all 3 offers, but the terms were harsh. Each species would reduce their military to defensive levels only. Each would allow human observers to verify compliance. Each would pay reparations to the families of those killed at New Harmony. The galaxy learned quickly that humanity was not interested in conquest, but they would extract every possible advantage from their victory. On Earth, the mood was complex. There were celebrations in some cities, people waving flags and cheering in the streets. Humanity had proven itself to the galaxy. They had taken on multiple species and won decisively, but in other places there was a deeper, quieter reaction. Memorials were built for the soldiers who had died. Support groups formed for veterans returning from the war. Religious leaders spoke of the burden of victory and the cost of violence. In a quiet office in Geneva, Dr. Elena Vasquez reviewed psychological assessments of soldiers returning from the Kthra campaign. She was the chief psychologist for the United Defense Force, and what she was seeing in the data terrified her. "We created something efficient," she said to General Zhao during their weekly briefing. "Our soldiers are incredibly effective. The Kthra never stood a chance once we committed to total war. But look at these statistics." General Zhao examined the reports. The numbers painted a disturbing picture. 43% of returning soldiers showed signs of severe psychological trauma. 27% reported nightmares about combat actions they had taken. 15% expressed concerns about their ability to return to civilian life. And most troubling, 8% reported that they had enjoyed the combat. "They are good at war," Elena continued. "Too good. We spent 47 years pretending to be peaceful, but we never stopped preparing for conflict. We trained these men and women to be efficient killers, and now we are surprised that they struggle with what they became." "What do you recommend?" General Zhao asked. "Mandatory psychological support for all returning personnel. No exceptions. And we need to be honest about what we asked them to do. We sent them to fight a war without mercy, and they followed orders. The least we can do is help them process what that means." On the Kthra homeworld, the occupation was proving more complex than anticipated. Colonel Amanda Torres had expected resistance, sabotage, attempts at insurgency. Instead, she found a population that seemed shocked into compliance. The Kthra civilians were not hostile. They were afraid. "They think we are going to kill them," Lieutenant Sarah Kim reported after conducting interviews with local residents. "They expect us to do to them what they did to New Harmony." Amanda had seen the recordings from New Harmony, the piles of bodies, the burned children, the systematic slaughter that the Kthra had inflicted. She understood the desire for revenge. Some of her soldiers had lost family members in that attack, but humanity had made a choice about what kind of species they wanted to be, even in victory. "We are not going to kill civilians," Amanda said firmly. "That is not who we are. Make sure every unit commander understands. Anyone who violates the rules of engagement will face court-martial. We won this war. Now we have to win the peace. It was easier said than done." Private James Chen, no relation to Ambassador Sarah Chen, stood guard at a distribution center where human forces were providing food and medical supplies to displaced Kthra civilians. He watched as the aliens lined up, their scales dulled by stress and malnutrition, and he tried to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew they had done. "They killed my cousin," he said to his squad mate, Corporal Maria Santos. "She was at New Harmony. She was a teacher. They burned her school with all the children inside." "I know," Maria replied. "My brother died there too. But these civilians did not do that. Their military did. We are trying to be better than them." "Are we?" James asked. "We used biological weapons. We deployed AI that killed without hesitation. We bombed their cities and invaded their homeworld. How are we better?" Maria did not have an answer. It was the question that haunted every human soldier on occupation duty. They had won by being more ruthless, more efficient, more willing to do terrible things than their enemies. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped holding back. And now they were trying to figure out how to put the restraints back on. On Earth, the debate raged in every parliament, every senate, every governing body. What kind of military should humanity maintain now? What role should they play in the galaxy? How could they prevent this from happening again? Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Earth for the first time in 3 years to address the United Nations. She stood at the podium where so many leaders had spoken before, and she looked out at representatives from every nation on Earth. "We won the war," she began. "The Kthra have surrendered. Their allies have made peace. Humanity has secured its position in the galaxy. But I want to talk about what that victory cost us. She displayed images from the war, not the glorious battle scenes that the media had shown, but the aftermath. Destroyed cities on both sides, wounded soldiers, human and alien, the faces of children who had lost parents, the burned landscape of New Harmony where flowers were just beginning to grow again. This is what war looks like, Sarah continued. Not the strategic victories or the tactical brilliance, this. We had to do terrible things to win. We used weapons we are not proud of. We killed thousands, maybe millions. We did it because we had no choice, because the alternative was extinction. But let us never pretend that it was glorious. The chamber was silent. The galaxy is afraid of us now, Sarah said. They have seen what we are capable of when we stop holding back. Some of you might think that is good, that fear equals respect. But I have spent decades in diplomatic service, and I can tell you that fear is not a foundation for lasting peace. Fear breeds resentment. Resentment breeds conspiracy. Eventually, the fearful become desperate enough to try again. What are you proposing? Asked the Secretary General. We maintain our military strength, Sarah replied. We do not dismantle our weapons or pretend we are harmless. The galaxy will not believe that lie again. But we also commit to being something more than a military power. We invest in diplomacy, in cultural exchange, in building genuine relationships with other species. We show them that humanity can be trusted with power because we understand its responsibility. The proposal sparked heated debate. Some argued that humanity should leverage its military dominance to expand its territory and influence. Others believed that Earth should retreat into isolation, maintaining defenses but avoiding galactic politics. Still others wanted to pursue Sarah's middle path, maintaining strength while rebuilding trust. On the Kthra homeworld, War Commander Thexkal awaited trial in a human detention facility. He was treated according to the Geneva Conventions, ancient human laws about the treatment of prisoners that the Kthra had never bothered to develop. He had adequate food, medical care, and even access to legal representation. His lawyer was human, a woman named Rebecca Martinez who had volunteered to represent Kthra war criminals because she believed everyone deserved a fair trial. I do not understand you, Thexkal said during one of their meetings. My people murdered yours. I gave the orders that led to the New Harmony massacre. Why are you helping me? Because that is what justice means, Rebecca replied. You will be tried for your crimes. If found guilty, you will be punished. But you will have a trial, with evidence and witnesses and the opportunity to defend yourself. That is the difference between justice and revenge. We would not have given you a trial, Thexkal admitted. If we had won, we would have simply killed any human leaders we captured. I know, Rebecca said. That is why you lost. The trial took 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Thexkal had ordered the attack on New Harmony. He had authorized the targeting of civilian populations. He had refused offers of surrender that might have saved lives. The tribunal, composed of judges from multiple species including humans, found him guilty of war crimes and crimes against genocide. The sentence was life imprisonment, not death. When asked why, the chief judge, a human named Robert Kim, explained, "We could execute him. It would be justified under our laws. But execution is easy. It ends the story. We want War Commander Thexkal to live. We want him to spend the rest of his life thinking about what he did, understanding the consequences of his actions, and perhaps eventually coming to terms with why he lost. That is a more meaningful punishment than death." Back on Earth, the first war memorials were completed. They were not triumphant monuments celebrating victory. They were somber walls listing names, parks for quiet reflection, and museums showing the reality of war. Each memorial included a quote from Ambassador Chen. "We won because we had to, not because we wanted to. Let us never forget the difference." Private James Chen visited the memorial in San Francisco, where his cousin's name was engraved in black. 5 years had passed since the end of the war. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same crystal architecture stretching kilometers in every direction. But everything else had changed. At the High Council table, where once only the oldest and most powerful civilization sat, there was now a human representative. Ambassador Sarah Chen had declined the position, recommending instead Admiral James Okoye, who had retired from military service, to take up diplomatic duties. The change in seating arrangements was symbolic of a larger shift. The Council had restructured its entire approach to military regulation. Species were no longer required to limit their defense capabilities. Instead, New protocols focused on clear rules of engagement, transparency in military deployments, and swift international response to acts of aggression. The regulations had teeth now, backed by the implicit threat that humanity would enforce them if necessary. The Thalorian cluster is reporting border tensions with the Margrave Union, James said, reviewing the morning's intelligence briefing. Both sides are mobilizing military assets, but they are following proper notification protocols. Crystalline thought. Ascending shimmered with colors that James had learned to recognize as relief. 5 years ago, such a conflict would have escalated without oversight. Now both parties understand that violations will be addressed by Council peacekeepers. Council peacekeepers, James noted, is an interesting way to say human enforcement fleet. You are not wrong, the Valorian admitted. No species wishes to face humanity in conflict. Your reputation precedes you, it was true. Humanity had become the galaxy's enforcer, not through choice but through necessity. When the Drac sovereignty had attempted to annex a neighboring system 2 years ago, a single human diplomatic ship had arrived and informed them that they had 24 hours to withdraw or face consequences. The Dracs had withdrawn within 6 hours. When pirates began raiding shipping lanes in the outer sectors, human hunter-killer drones had hunted them down with ruthless efficiency. The piracy stopped within weeks. Fear was an effective tool, but James understood what Ambassador Chen had warned about. Fear without trust was a fragile foundation. We need to discuss the cultural exchange program, James said. Earth is proposing an expansion. The program had started small, with a few hundred students from various species attending universities on Earth and human students studying on alien worlds. Now it encompassed thousands of participants, and the results were promising. Young Kthra, who had grown up learning to fear humans, were now studying alongside them, discovering that the same species capable of terrible warfare could also create beautiful art, complex literature, and profound philosophy. The program has the support of most council members, Crystalline Thought Ascending said. Though some species remain concerned about human cultural influence, they are worried we will corrupt their young people with our violent tendencies. James asked with a slight smile. Something like that. On the Kthra homeworld, now officially renamed Kthra, and administered by a coalition government that included both Kthra and human representatives, reconstruction continued. The cities that had been damaged in the war had been rebuilt, often with human assistance. The economy was slowly recovering, and a new generation of Kthra was growing up in a very different world than their parents had known. Sephiron, former military officer and now serving as the Kthra Minister of Reconciliation, walked through a memorial park in the capital city. The park honored both Kthra and human victims of the war, with no distinction between them and death. It had been controversial when first proposed, but Sephiron had pushed for it anyway. They died because of decisions made by leaders, he had argued. Soldiers on both sides, civilians on both sides. We honor them all or we learn nothing. A human woman was sitting on a bench near the memorial wall, staring at a name engraved in both Kthra script and English. Sephiron recognized her from briefings. Colonel Amanda Torres, who had led the invasion force 5 years ago. She visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the war's end. Colonel Torres, Sephiron said, approaching carefully. I did not expect to see you here. Amanda looked up, her eyes tired. I come every year. That name there, Corporal David Chen, he was in my unit. He died clearing a building in Kethral. He was 23 years old. I am sorry, Sephiron said. So am I. Amanda stood up. I killed a lot of your people, Minister. I followed orders and I did my job, but I still killed them. I thought coming here would help me make sense of it. 5 years later, I am still trying. War makes sense only to those who have never fought in one, Sephiron replied. I have learned that from studying human history. You have a philosopher, a man named Sherman, who said war is hell. He was correct. William Tecumseh Sherman, Amanda confirmed. He also said that war is cruel and you cannot refine it. We tried to refine it, we tried to make it civilized. Then the Kthra killed 300,000 of our people, and we remembered what war really is. They stood together in silence for a moment. Two veterans on opposite sides of a conflict neither had wanted. Your people are afraid of us, Amanda finally said. I can see it every time I visit. They are polite, they are cooperative, but they are afraid. I understand why, but I wish there was a way to change it. Time, Sephiron suggested, and actions that build trust. You are here, after all. You could have stayed on Earth, enjoyed your victory, forgotten about us. Instead, you come back every year to remember our dead alongside your own. That means something. On Earth, in a small apartment in Chicago, James Chen had completed his transition back to civilian life. It had not been easy. The war had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He attended therapy twice a week, part of the mandatory program for all veterans. He had nightmares sometimes, seeing the faces of Kthra soldiers he had fought against, wondering if they had families, if they had been good people following bad orders. His therapist, Dr. Vasquez, had helped him develop coping strategies, but the real breakthrough had come when he started volunteering at a refugee center that helped Kthra civilians who had emigrated to Earth. There were not many, only a few thousand across the planet, but they needed support adjusting to human society. Why did you come here? James asked a young Kthra female named Shkala during one of their mentoring sessions. After everything that happened, why would you want to live on Earth? Because Earth is where the future is, Shkala replied in heavily accented English. She was learning the language, struggling with the sounds that Kthra vocal cords were not designed to make. My world is broken. We lost the war. We lost our pride. We lost our place in the galaxy. But Earth? Earth won and then chose not to destroy us. Earth gave us a future. I want to understand how a species can be so powerful and so merciful at the same time. James thought about that. Merciful was not a word he would have used to describe humanity's conduct of the war, but in the aftermath, in the choice to rebuild rather than obliterate, maybe mercy was the right word after all. We are not as merciful as you think, he said honestly. We did terrible things during the war. I know, Shkala replied. I have studied the history. I have seen the footage. But you also stopped. You won and you could have killed us all, but you stopped. That is the part I want to understand. In the Galactic Council, a new crisis was emerging. A species called the Vaughn, from a distant sector that had limited contact with the Council, had begun expanding aggressively into neighboring territories. Early reports suggested they had advanced weapons technology and a militant culture that glorified conquest. They have not yet attacked any Council members, James reported to the assembled delegates, but their actions suggest they are testing boundaries much like the Kthra did 5 years ago. The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered what had happened when the Kthra tested boundaries. What do you recommend? Crystalline Thought Ascending asked. We send a diplomatic mission, James replied. We explain the Council's rules and the consequences of violating them. We offer them the opportunity to join peacefully or to remain independent but respectful of our borders. And if they refuse, we make it very clear what will happen. And if they do not believe your warnings? A Malothian delegate asked. The Kthra did not believe. Then they will learn the same lesson the Kthra learned, James said grimly. But hopefully they are smarter. The diplomatic mission was led by a joint team of humans and Kthra, a symbolic choice that showed the galaxy how much had changed. Sephiron represented the Kthra, and he brought with him recordings of the war, footage of the devastation, testimony from survivors. The message was clear. This is what happens when you challenge humanity. The Vaughn leaders watched the presentations in silence. They were insectoid beings with compound eyes that reflected no emotion humans could read. But their translator rendered their final response clearly. We understand. We will respect Council boundaries. The crisis was resolved without bloodshed. It was a small victory, but an important one. The galaxy was learning that humanity's threats were not bluffs, but also that humanity preferred peace when possible. Back on Earth, in a ceremony attended by representatives from dozens of species, the new galactic memorial was unveiled.